In the name of God, the most merciful, the most benevolent, the most advanced. Okay. Okay. So, hello everyone. To dive into it. Many traditions reject the idea that physical reality is the highest level of being. Many traditions reject the idea that physical reality is the highest level of being. It has been the case. We were not alive then, but they perceived it as such. Okay. All right, guys. Sorry about this. I'm a bit nasally trying to give a lecture here. It's cold. It's like -5, and these are not excuses. These are just what's going on. All right, guys. Two components. I'll just speed through this lecture. There's two components to this lecture. One, the Mr. Withinian view, and one, the research component. For me, it was very interesting. I know that different traditions acknowledge reality differently. I was raised in a very interesting way. What I mean by that, I mean I was born in Iran, and then at a very young age, my parents, through the grace of the system admin, they took me and my twin brother to Vancouver, and then I was in Canada for some years, and then I went back to Iran for like 4 years, 4 or 5 years, and then I came back to Toronto. Now, this might be the perfect talk to be given by a person like me because I have seen not only two different cultural programs, not only do I have identity in different cultural programs. For example, people who are not bilingual, they don't have that secondary identity or realm of expression. Religion does not acknowledge physical reality as the highest level of being, and modern culture is limiting, is what was trying to limit reality to physical reality. Because let me tell you something funny. Granted, some human beings were earlier in the room and they set the conditions, some of the conditions. Personally, physical reality is not the highest level of being. Even we assume we're living physically, no, we're living ideologically. Every person has a subjective representation of themselves, a sort of character in the story. That means what you want out of life is not shape, it is the experience. You know, I find it funny. Humans treat themselves that they are created by God, but they act superior to God. It's about who is giving meaning to reality. I'm going to read for you. I'm going to read for the viewers the research component because it is not, this podcast is not about you just hearing one human being. It's about figuring out what's going on Earth as a species together. I don't know any of you. There's 8.1 billion other human beings. Yet I find something in common, our existential position. I find myself human now, and so it is a human game. And yet the human game is not being played in a human place. But it's fascinating nonetheless because life has to go forth. The most interesting thing about my life is that every moment I've tried to contain it in language and it keeps going forth. It's like my soul, I'm not even to some degree afraid of death in some sense because it's like I'm in the position of a mind and ego wondering where my soul is going. You see, traditionally they had the view body, mind, soul. Even if you go earlier than the word mind, they would call it spirit. It was soul, spirit, body. At some point, they would even call it speech. I have studied this throughout the years. I've shared it with the viewers too. You know, I can tell you, I have noticed these patterns, guys. I have noticed these patterns in different cultures, and it's all about their response to their existential situation and the way they gave meaning. You might not believe it, but to me, existence is like the piano keys, and one's soul is how what sort of melody is being heard. You can't even see the soul, but you can hear its melody. You can see the result of whatever intelligence you are. Recently, unfortunately, it has occurred to me that the outer realms and even in the objective universe and subjective universe, they are deceptive. They are deceptive in nature. Somebody can come and tell someone, I love you, but then in moments of importance, do nothing. In moments where, not show care, not show consideration, not show awareness of others' emotions. Do you know? The issue is, guys, let me tell you, have you heard this thing where they say, like, sometimes a person has to be emotionally available? There is such a heavy truth to that because it means it's just the principle of life. Why is, let me say it this way, this is the only way the idea of balance, how do I say it? It's like balance, it's like stepping stones, and you balance yourself on the stone or the moment you are to jump into the next moment. You know, my task as this dude calling himself Mr. Within in human history is to, in some sense, point to the advanced option. I, like every other human being, let me tell you what it's like living in 2025 if you opened your eyes since 91. Not only have I lived 12,400 days on this planet, but more and more I'm beginning to understand that every person's story and meaning is incomplete. It's the strangeness of this world. Everything is incomplete. You look at yourself, you can't in some sense see the experience. In the same way, you can't question the questioner. You know, the edge of the world unknown, the edge of the self unknown. Language was simulated in the unknown. Everything is unknown. Do you understand? We are in a very unknown place. Just because we can see what it looks like doesn't mean we have understood the nature of a reality. Now, here's the interesting thing. Before I get to reading for you all the different traditions, that physical reality was not the highest level of being. And yet, what do we do as human beings stuck in the excuse me, stuck in the lowest level, not lowest, but stuck in a level of reality that is conditional? Do you understand? This life can be as simply processed as like, hey, I open my eyes into a condition, so it's a conditional reality. It's about attaining the necessary conditional values that provide enough balance for you to leap to the next condition. I have wondered, you know what it is? I have wondered about this world, and I've noticed something very funny. Self simulated meaning and the ego is the opposite of the flow state. It's legit, our attention is what can solidify us, liquefy us, or gasify us. You understand? It's the nature of your attention. Now, I want you to consider this. Let me tell you why um, the inner realms, exploring the inner realms was not enough, and why I still feel I exist. Because I'm sorry to say this, but I feel as a soul, um, I've witnessed the nature of what's happening here in a way where my life finished a while ago. This might sound very strange to the viewers. I might not be able to even explain it to you guys, but we're under the impression that we're this one self, okay? But no, no, no. You have one body. You don't know about the self. You know you have one body, one physical body you can live, okay? Now the question is, what is moving in this body? Ultimately, if you ignore the language, it's an unknown force moving forward. That's really what's going on. That means force has no personality, yo, but we have personalities. WTF are we doing here? You know, as a species, are we here to all be artists? Because to me, it is art. You know, people are like, art is dead. Oh my God, art is dead, guys. They're freaking, a little bit of shampoo, fell on white tile, and they're considering that as modern art. Art is dead, guys. You know, and it's like, no, art is not dead. It's quite the opposite. We have known nothing else other than art. Think about that. There's only one thing I need to, like, how do I say it? These talks are not even like me anymore explaining things to you. It's about me just pointing, just flying to a certain elevation. And this is the viewpoint that if you're someone who has found this moment, then I guess this is something you need to be aware of in your function in this life. Imagine if just, I want you to visually somehow, you might not be a visual thinker, but I want you to imagine this moment was a film, life was a film, and you rewinded back to the earliest human beings that could speak. You can see that they invented here in the middle of somewhere that's honestly closer to nowhere. They invented the here and now, and they want to keep you. When I say they, I'm talking about the early humans. Pretty much they freaked out, didn't know what to do, and reduced reality to a symbolic truth and lived in accordance to that and thought that was it. But now the maturity of the species has increased. I know personally, I think by the age of 30, I'm 34, but I'm sure by the age of 30, you will have experienced moments that would be at least, let's say, one or two moments where you cannot explain how coincidental and lucky. I firmly believe this. In these 12,000 days, it has been a sequence of action. If you look at it from an aerial view, Just for a moment, be that eagle that can land on the branch and fly into the sky. You need to find an unknown sky and trust it. And then and as you trust that unknown sky, then you look back now and you see the whole forest of reality. What does this mean? Fellow human being and member of the human species, I am just like you, an unknown life force. What's moving me right now, what's using these words, what's expressing here, the safest and the best way we can explain it is that it's an unknown force. It's a verb. It's an unknown verb, nouns in a known way, and then assuming those known nouns are the limits. That means, how dare you think you are an idea when you were born naked, even from language, before you clothed your identity and yourself in language. I don't know how people experience power. This was a question for me when I was young. To me, it appeared some human beings, they appeared powerful. And let me say it this way: when I was young, I was like, yo, man, that person's so powerful. That person is so great. How come when I go into the same moment, there's all these limits? There's all these barriers. There's all these unnecessary novelties, you know? And it took me a while to realize what really moves me. And you know what the hilarious truth is? What is important lives on. Not all ideas are meant to live on. You don't understand the game I'm playing with the future, and it's really God's mercy, is that I am trying to. I don't know why my soul has this pattern, but it's like I feel a part of me could not exist without honoring the past, present, and future. All there is no one of them, folks. They convince you it's one of them. They convince you it's just the present. So you don't think about the future, so they're busy thinking about the future. There is no they, by the way. When I keep saying this, I'm trying to present to you that human beings that think that they are humans are not the real humans. They are programs. To be human is to realize the same moment that I'm considering to be an object and I'm considering to be a subject is simultaneously a state of awareness. You understand what that means? That means if you ask me who am I and I say I'm my body, if you just see my body and assume that's me, that's correct. If I tell you my name and you assume those letters and that word, you know, you would also be correct. And if you assume before any thought can associate with anything, this is really a part of idealism, that there is an original instantaneous beginning. Guys, when have beginnings made sense? When have the beginning of any story been explainable from before? And granted, there are some novelists that kind of write like the third book is the first book and then they reverse it, but I don't know. I'm telling you, folks, that 117 billion humans have existed considering the last 300,000 years. 7% of all human beings that have ever existed are currently existing. 8.1 billion of us, 8.8 billion of us 8 billion humans, and we are the last living humans on Earth, and yet we fight, we're cruel. We don't identify and honor the species. You know, when the prophet said, "Love thyself, love yourself," what do you think they meant? Do you think they meant your opinions on you, or do you think they meant what is you, the design of you? Go look in the mirror. And even if there's nothing in your life you care about, you cannot ignore you're existing as the member of the species. You're part of this tribe by the nature of your existence. You don't need a gym membership, you don't need a card or a badge. Your existence as a human is what in some sense, if you become responsible for your species, gives you honor. I have realized, do you know why people suffer? One answer is they make mistakes. Another answer is their world is too small. Their world is too small. They have reduced the world to manage it, and you believe the managed world. Ridiculous. In my experience, if I was to give you, like, so you got to think of it this way. Um, the reason I didn't just give one talk and wait for 10,000 people to listen to it to be like the 10,000 talks are complete is because for me, if you make the known more important than the unknown, you will be limited and you will experience writer's block. But if you make the unknown more important than the known, you will endlessly live fascinated. That's one thing that has happened. When I was young, people would say, "Why are you smiling?" And I had no idea I was smiling. But years later, maybe like 2 decades later, I was smiling because I was participating in the existential event. You don't understand what your existence means. And I know that there's this eerie feeling of like being alone behind your eyes in a way where you're like, who can ever care to understand this? But I will tell you, your species, like, how do I say it? This is coming from someone who's, how do I say it? With around people, unless they, my OCD kicks in a little something. It's very rare that happens. Pretty much means organization on a detailed level is important. That's what OCD is. I don't know how to say it. I have been, in my experience, if I was to look at the film of my life up till now, I know that I have been gentler with the outer realms than aggressive. And the point is, I'm trying to say, there's a part of me that from the beginning, I don't know, just the way I was raised, problems are to be solved behind my eyes before in front. I have been heartless to myself. There has been moments where I have been angry at the outer realms, but I had this feeling like I don't know what I'm angry at. But I know myself. I'm going to direct my anger at myself, and it's hilarious because behind my eyes, in my inner realms, technically the sense of self is stimulated by where attention is. So the sense of self is immortal. It can be immortalized. You know what that means? That means I can imagine myself grabbing myself behind my eyes in my inner realms, I can imagine myself grabbing myself by the shirt and with like next level power slamming myself to a building and watching the building break. Like in my inner realms, I can do that. In my inner realms, I can amplify my suffering and I can amplify my joy. You understand? We live in the inner realms in ways that we don't share in the outer realms, and the inner realms is giving us privacy. Do you understand? That means if everybody's like, if somebody came up to me and they're like, man, do you want to be telepathic? I'll be like, F no. You know, you want me to freaking know what's behind everybody's inner realms? You know what I mean? At that point, it would be like, I shouldn't say it's God's will because to some degree, I can see people's inner realms. I can't see like I'm not telepathic, but based on how their eyes move or how this might sound like a very strange statement, but how the moment holds their eyes, I can know if they're in their inner realms. I can even look at a being and know if there's another being in there. I've seen it with lesser animals. There's times where I've seen like, squirrels or cats that they suddenly froze and what was looking through their eyes didn't have the motion of a cat. Like the head of the cat wasn't moving like the head